Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to have Maya Linnell here tonight. It's Maya's second time for an interview, and you've joined us before for Author is the Day, so really great to have you back again, and thanks for your support to our group by joining in. So, Maya's the best-selling rural fiction author, and she gathers her inspiration from her rural upbringing and the small communities she's always lived in and loved. Magpie's Bend, which I've got a copy of here. Oh, mine's not really showing very well. So Magpie's Bend is her third novel with Alan and Unwin, which follows on from Bottlebrush Creek and Wildflower Ridge, which both made the Better Reading Top 100 book lists. A former country journalist and radio host, Maya also blogs for Romance Writers Australia, loves baking up a storm, tending to her rambling garden, and raising three little bookworms. She writes to a soundtrack of magpies, sheep, and chickens on a small property in southwest Victoria, where she lives with her family, their menagerie of farm animals, and the odd tiger snake or two. So thanks so much for joining us. Have to say that I love following your Instagram and seeing all your baking on there.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here tonight, and I'm really pleased to be able to, connect through the Global Girls Online Book Club. I know there's a lot of different members all across the country, all across the world.
Yep, thank you. And I wondered if you wanted to start off by telling us a little bit about Magpie's Bend.
Yes, thank you. So Magpie's Bend is a rural romance novel. It came out in June this year with Alan Unwin in paperback, ebook, and audio, which is such a treat to know that it's on all those different platforms. It's the story of Lara McIntyre, and she's a bush nurse. She's a long-distance runner. She's a single mum, very devoted to her teenage daughter, and she's also very passionate about her community. And then we also have Toby Paxton, and he's a journalist. He works at the country newspaper, the local newspaper. He's an import to town. So he's only been there for a little while, but he's already gotten a sense that this community cares a heck of a lot about, the things that go on within the town and the different community members. So when the general store suddenly becomes in jeopardy and it looks like maybe it'll have to be sold, he kind of gets thrust into the fight to try and save that general store along with Lara. So it's a lot of fun. There's baking, there's gardening, there's a little bit of romance, lots of really neat farming things, and I guess it's, the beating heart of the community is the general store. So it's really important to everyone involved that they do their best to try and keep it going.
Yeah, well, thanks for that little synopsis of your book. Wondering if you want to maybe read a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
That would be great.
Look, I was thinking one of the really neat things about the book right from the start was I was so thrilled to have Katrina Roundtree. Now, our Australian people that are tuning in tonight will know Katrina has been on our TV screens for many, many years, I think over 20 years, as a presenter at Getaway. And she read a very early draft of the book back at the start of the year, and she put together a cover quote. So she was just so gracious and said, Maya Linnell really knows how to tug on her heartstrings, just the right dollop of reality. I couldn't put it down. So to have her endorsement on the front cover was just fabulous. And so we start, I'll just read the first two scenes of the book because it gives you a little bit of a feel for it. And I dedicated this book to my children as well because the first two books, Wildflower Ridge and Bottlebrush Creek, they felt really ripped off that they hadn't received dedication at the front. So I dedicated this book to them. So chapter 1, Lara McIntyre charged through the front door of the Bridgefield General Store and headed straight for the postcard display. As a kid, she'd delighted in the store's 1-cent lollies, though her teen years, she'd posted letters to her pen pals and ordered countless hot pies and cold drinks. And she had bought more bread, milk, and newspapers than she could remember. But never before had she browsed the postcard range. In fact, Lara decided, wiping the layer of dust from the panoramas of mountains, the sheep-filled paddocks, and the sun setting over Bridgefield Lake, it seemed like nobody had browsed the postcard range in decades. She chose one featuring the Grampians mountain range and headed to the counter, certain the memento would put a smile on her daughter Evie's face when it arrived at her fancy city boarding school. The pie warmer glowed and cricket commentary blared from the radio, but there was no sign of the town's postmistress or her wayward nephew who helped run the shop. Lara craned her neck to see into the back room. "Mrs. Beggs?" Lara called out again. It still felt a little odd not to be standing on the other side of the counter serving, as she had done all throughout her teens. "Mrs. Beggs?" Nothing. She sniffed, trying to identify the strange smell. And what was that crackling noise? Lara felt a prickle of apprehension. She dumped her postcard and keyring on the counter and rushed to the shop's kitchen. A well-worn novel lay on the tea room table next to a half-drunk mug of tea and an empty egg carton. Eggs jumped in the now dry saucepan, not just hard-boiled, but burned beyond redemption. Lara switched off the stovetop and opened a window to disperse the acrid smell. "Mrs. Beggs, Dallas." Sweeping into the cluttered storeroom, Lara kept her voice calm. She gulped when she spotted a black shoe beside a pile of boxes. Her nursing instincts kicked in. She quickly assessed the situation. If it wasn't for the arm twisted behind her, or the blood seeping from a wound on her cheek, Mrs. Beggs could almost have been sleeping. She and Evie had both joked about being buried alive in Mrs. Beggs' storeroom during their years at the shop, but the sight of those boxes rested awkwardly on the postmistress's chest wasn't the least bit funny. Lara crouched down, gently trying to rouse her. "Mrs. Beggs, are you okay? Mrs. Beggs?" So that's the opening scene of Magpie's Bend.
No, that's a great introduction, yeah. No, thanks for that. And I've noticed your earrings. Aren't your earrings wonderful?
Oh, thank you, Jackie. These beautiful earrings were a gift to me from a friend of mine, and she's another writer. And Kirsty sent them all the way from Brisbane. She'd found them and thought they just looked like the perfect fit for someone who wrote a book called Magpie's Bend. So it was just a really touching gift.
Yeah. And we've got lots of people watching, which is really great. So just wanting to say to the people watching, if you've got a question for Maya, please type it in comments and I'll read it out to her. And we do have quite a lot of questions coming in already. Mary Lou wonders if you barrack for the Magpies.
No, Mary Lou, definitely not a Magpies fan, but that's a good question. I'm more of an Adelaide Crows kind of girl.
So still a bird, but not the. Kelly said she loves the title and she wonders if you chose it.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. I did. It's funny, the different books that I've written have had various titles throughout the life of the manuscript. So Magpie's Bend was called The Track to Windmill Creek for quite a while. Most of the time I was working on it, it was called that. And that's because one of the running tracks that Lara goes running on at 6 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning, she's out hitting the tracks running. And she would go along this windmill track, and there's quite an important scene as well that takes place there. And there's one of the fundraisers that they hold also is held there as well.
And I have to mention, I love the cover. A beautiful picture, like I love the woman on the front and her hair is beautiful. Reminds me, I've got a daughter with red hair and it really reminds me of her hair. When you first saw the picture of the woman, did that remind you, like, was that how you had envisaged Lara to be?
It's really funny, Jackie. You kind of, you have an idea in your own mind of what the characters look like. And I'm not sure if any photo can really come particularly close, but the second that I saw the cover of Magpie's Bend, a very clever cover designer called Nada, who does a lot of covers for Allen & Unwin, she's put together this beautiful cover and I fell in love the second I saw it. It was an instant, wonderful moment.
Yeah, that's great.
She's just a really lovely lady. She's got that kind face as well. And I was delighted with it.
Yeah, no, it's really stunning. Wendy said from your bio that I read out at the beginning, she loves the description of your background, country gardens and bookworms.
Thank you, Wendy. Look, these are some of the things that I love, and so being able to put them into a novel and have fictional characters having loads of fun with the baking and with the gardening and loving books, it's a really nice treat. And because they're things that I love in my own life, I find it really easy to write about them as well.
Yeah. And Rebecca wonders how you chose your story topic and the characters that are in these stories.
Yeah, hi, Rebecca. Different parts of the story will come to me at different times. So in the time that I was working on my second novel, Bottlebrush Creek, I knew that I wanted to, for the third story, write Lara's story. And one of the things that I worked out really early on when I was writing the first two books was that Lara was a long distance runner, and that's her form of therapy. So, you know, she's out there pounding the pavements in the morning when there's no one else around. She's saying hello to the cows. She's working off some steam and processing different things that are going on for her in her life. So I guess running was always going to be a theme. I was a helper at organising a fun run for our local community. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, I've got a little bit of an insight into that. The general store being in jeopardy was another a local issue that was quite close to home. We had an issue similar. It didn't end up the same way as in Magpie's Bend, but it was nice to be able to use some of the different conversations and talking points that came up, you know, when we were at the school gate or chatting with friends at barbecues. You know, I thought, oh, well, what if that could happen? Or how would the community react if someone from out of town came and changed it completely? You know, would they be happy? Would it be something that would work in the news store in his favour if they're changing it beyond recognition? So different little things will come to me. We had a little magpie fly into our lives the summer before last. And in the book, Magpie's Bend, there's a magpie in there. So I thought, well, you know, it's lovely to be able to throw into these little things that I've, you know, had a magpie sitting on my hand, and you wouldn't know how long their eyelashes are until you've got one sitting on the hand and you're feeding it and it's, you know, fluttering its eyelashes at you. You just don't know these things until they're there in front of you. So it's nice to just add them into my books.
Yeah. And I'm interested to know a bit more about how you got into writing. Had you always thought you wanted to be a writer? And like when you were growing up, had you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, so I've always loved writing and always loved reading. So I think books were my first love. You know, sitting there curled up with a Trixie Belden book or a Nancy Drew novel or The Babysitter's Club. So many great books to choose from. So from a young age, I was writing little stories, and my mum and dad said to me, Maya, one day you'll write a book. So I was really lucky to have the support of parents who loved books, and they were really happy for us to sit around reading if we wanted to. You know, there was lots of time spent outside climbing trees, hunting for snakes, being disappointed when we only found lizards instead of tiger snakes, but, you know, all these things that country kids do. And so my dad was a journalist as well, and he worked really hard to find his niche, writing what he loved. And so that was then some inspiration for me as an adult to go and chase my own dreams and start writing my own in journalism first, and then segueing into fiction.
And we've got a few people asking about when your next book will be out, and if you can tell us anything about it. Michelle's even said, is Diana's story going to come out sometime?
Hi, Michelle. I'm so thrilled that you're excited about Diana's story too. Yes, I have sent the manuscript off to my publisher. I've got the lovely Annette Barlow at Allen & Unwin takes care of my books. She is reading it at the moment, so I need to wait very patiently to hear if she thinks it's good or if I've got to start and rewrite it, which fingers crossed is not the case. But it will be coming out next winter, all things going to plan. And Diana's story, she's the oldest of the four McIntyre sisters. So anybody who's read Wildflower Ridge, Bottlebrush Creek or Magpie's Bend will know that each of my books have focused on a different sister within the McIntyre family. And it's a real joy to be able to tell their story and give them their own time in the sun. So Diana's story is about a flower farm and having a beautiful a huge garden. I've got a couple of acres of garden that keeps me nice and busy. When I'm not weeding, I'm planting. If I'm not planting, I'm raising seedlings. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm cutting and making beautiful bouquets or growing veggies. And I love it. So one of the things that I thought, wouldn't it be great to put a flower farm into one of my books? Because, I've said to my husband, I've got all these dahlias and I'm giving them away on the side of the road. Imagine we should start a dahlia farm. It's like, Maya, I think might need to stick to just, doing the books and doing what I do well. It takes up a lot of my time. The books, I treat it like a real job. So as soon as the kids are off to school in the morning, I'm at my desk, and I don't generally leave that desk until after I've hit my word count. Sometimes that's not until 3 o'clock. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier. But with all those different things going on, it's absolutely correct. I don't really have time to start a flower farm, but I can write about someone who is trying to start a flower farm and live voyeuristically through her. So there's a lot of fun in putting together Diana's story, and it will be the final one in this series. And I say series loosely because the books are linked, but you don't have to read one to be able to enjoy the other. But yes, it'll be the final book with the McIntyre family. So it's tricky trying to wrap all those things up and tie up loose ends.
Yeah. And so what happens now that you've written about each of the sisters? What's next?
Yeah, so I've just started last week working on a completely different book. So it will still be rural romance. I love reading rural romance. I'm a country girl. I live in a country area. We've got sheep, we've got calves, we've got chickens. It makes sense to me to write what I know. So the new book is going to be set in South Australia. And if anyone's familiar with wine, then the name Coonawarra will ring a bell. So the Coonawarra wine region is where I'm setting book number 5. And at this stage, hopefully that'll come out in winter of 2023.
Sounds lots of exciting things coming up. And Sarah Joy is wondering if she can ask questions not about books. She would love to hear some stories about your menagerie.
Hi, Sarah. Yes, I'm happy to chat about our animals. So we have 3 little calves. We have Sadie, Tess, and Rachel. And they're Frisian Cross Angus. We raised them from bottles last September. So we got them as week-old or 2-week-old. Beautiful little babies, and fed them milk and then pellets and then hay, and now they're just cruising around the paddock just looking gorgeous and cuddly, and we pat them every time we walk down the paddock. We also have some lambs, the newest ones, Hitchcock and Amy. They're just on the cusp of being weaned at the moment, so anytime we go outside, like today it was beautiful and sunny even though it's winter here in southwest Victoria. They're at the fence crying and crying, saying, feed me, I don't understand, I'm only getting 2 bottles, or I'm getting 1 bottle when I used to have 3 bottles a day, what's the deal? They are so sweet. They'll come in when I'm weeding in the garden, which is a lot at the moment because we've had some great rain. So I'll let them out into my garden, and we've got lots of lawn as well, so they don't just demolish my garden yet. They're not old enough for that. But they'll just potter around behind me, and, I'll fill up a bucket full of weeds to take to the chickens, and then I'll turn around and here's the lambs helping themselves to the weeds that I've collected for the chickens. They've got acres of garden and acres of grass to mow inside the house yard, and here they are helping themselves to the weeds that I've picked. So they're very sweet, and they keep us entertained.
Yeah, very cute. Donna says she listened to you when you took over Word and Nerds podcast with your publisher, and you were fantastic, and it was so informative, and it was amazing to learn how you got your book picked up too.
Oh, thank you, Donna. I'm really pleased you enjoyed that. One of the funny things in the interview, Annette said that I was one of their most curious authors because I just love finding out how things work. Well, in publishing, you don't hear too much about it. It seems to be quite a not secretive, because no one's intentionally holding back information, but for authors who are keen to get published, there's so much mystery surrounding publishing. So I jumped at the chance to interview Annette and ask her some of the questions that I wanted to know, and also some of the common questions that people ask me. I'm definitely not an expert at all in writing or in publishing, but I do like to try and share what I do know when I'm doing author talks and live events and podcast interviews. I feel, it's nice to be able to help out a little bit. But, that chat I really enjoyed, and it's so nice to see the feedback. So thank you for listening in, and hopefully I'll get to do some more podcast takeovers soon. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And Sarah Joy wonders where your books are set.
Yeah, Sarah Joy, the Bottlebrush Creek, Wildflower Ridge and Magpie's Bend are all set in Western Victoria. So the first book, Wildflower Ridge, and the third book, Magpie's Bend, are in the Grampians region. So the Grampians mountain range, it's about 3.5 hours away from Melbourne if you're heading west, a couple of hours from the South Australian border. It's beautiful grazing country, so lots of sheep, beautiful wool growing properties, lovely rolling green hills with the mountains in the background. So it's a really nice part of Australia, and it's quite close to where we live. And then Bottlebrush Creek, I decided to set even closer to home. That's right at the tail end of the Great Ocean Road. So still southwest Victoria, and it's in a town called Port Fairview. And if anyone's been down to southwest Victoria, you'll know that there's a town called Port Fairy, which is really similar to the town that I've set in here. So they're close to where we live. It's a nice place to write about because I know it well.
Yeah. And Kelly wonders if you have a favourite character.
Oh, it's a bit like picking your favourite child. I do find that each book that I'm working on, I become quite attached to the character that I'm writing on. So when I was writing my first book, which is Penny's story, my head was just full of Penny. She was the main character. Everything I was writing was from her point of view. So it was, you get attached to Penny. And then the second book is Angie's story. So, of course, then it's, all about Angie and what Angie likes and what she doesn't like, what she's scared of, what she's dreaming of, what she's, aiming for throughout the story. And, of course, in Magpie's Bend, it's Lara's story. So poor Diana, she's feeling a little bit left out because I've put her aside for the moment while the manuscript's in the publisher, and I'm working on the new book, which is not coming out until 2023. But so at the moment, my head is full of April, who's the new character, and I think that's an exclusive to the Global Girls Online Book Club. I haven't said the name of my main character of book 5 yet, but her name so far, and it could change, but at this stage, is April.
Thanks for sharing that. Jill's wondering if there's been any authors that inspire your writing.
Oh, look, definitely. I love reading, and we have so many great authors here in Australia. I also like to review books and help spread the word about good books. So I'm lucky enough to have lots of different books arriving on my doorstep regularly. But going back to my earlier years, before, when I wanted to become a writer, it was people like Marion Keyes and Maeve Binchy, so many great authors. Sydney Sheldon, I used to read a lot of Sydney Sheldon, John Grisham. I don't write courtroom thrillers, but geez, I picked up a lot from his writing from a young age. And I always used to like Bill Bryson. And then as I became an adult and reading more modern fiction, well, I'd get stuck into authors like Fleur MacDonald. She writes amazing rural romance for the same company that I do. Carly Lane, Rachel Johns. There's just so many fantastic authors, and we're really lucky. Monica McInerney, Fiona Lowe, Tricia Stringer, Victoria Perman. I could go on and on. My bookshelves behind me are full with fantastic Australian authors. So I shouldn't pick favourites, just like picking favourite children. But, I don't go wrong by picking up a book by any of those authors.
And I'm wondering what you might have been reading lately and if there's anything you could recommend.
Yeah, absolutely, Jackie. One that I finished just a couple of days ago was the very fantastic The Wattle Island Book Club. Now, this is by Sandy Docker. Sandy lives in Sydney, and not only is she a fantastic author, but she's a friend of mine, and we do writing group together on Friday mornings via Zoom. So we've been in the writing group together for quite some time. Her book comes out tomorrow.
Yeah,
and
I can't wait to read that one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. She really knows how to tug at your heartstrings. She is the queen of bittersweet endings. So take your tissues with you, Jackie, when you read this one. But yes, it's out tomorrow, and I'm delighted to be hosting a Zoom trivia night to celebrate her launch. So that's on Friday. If anyone likes trivia, there's great prizes.
I just signed up for that, so really looking forward to that. And also for people watching, we've got Sandy coming to talk to us in August as well. Sorry, in September as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I have a great time with Sandy. She's she has her own book show as well, which I'm sure you'll chat about, but she's a very lots of good things to talk about. And then this book just arrived in my mailbox last week. Okay. It's called The Banksia House Breakout. It's by James Roxburgh, and it's his debut. Now, that one's out next month, and I haven't read it yet, but I mean, look at that cover.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one before.
Yeah, it's with Ventura Press, and so I look forward to reading it. But it looks like cover. A really nice, a cozy read about an escape from an old folks' home.
Well, thanks for those. Mary Lou is wondering, she's a primary school teacher, and she's wondering what books your own bookworm children are interested in reading at the moment.
Yeah, so they go through stages. There's so many great books. When they were younger, we would read, things like Ruby Red Shoes, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Gruffalo, Room on the Broom. And, there's so many wonderful children's classics, Wombat Stew, Mem Fox's books. As they're getting older, their tastes are changing. Ando is a very firm favourite in our household. My youngest had the absolute honour of reading a very early copy of Ando's newest book. It was called Pow Pow Pig, and she got to read an art and provide a quote that went inside the front cover. So
great.
She was absolutely delighted to get her name up there in lights, as well as getting a dedication inside this year's book of mine. She's also got her name inside Ando's book. So they always love Ando books. The Treehouse books were always really popular. That silly kind of humour that kids like. Graphic novels. My son has just started devouring graphic novels by the bucket load. And then my daughter's just reading one called Huda and Me, which is aimed at middle grade readers. There's also one coming out very soon by Kelly Hawkins, which I'm very much looking forward to. I think it's called The School for Talking Pets. Okay. So that's coming up soon. I'm ordering that. I think it comes out in a couple of days.
Sounds good. And I'm wondering, how much research you need to do for your books. I know they're set in locations that you're familiar with, but is there other research you need to do?
Yeah, there's always different streams of research because if you're going to take on a topic, you want to do it well, and you don't want someone to read it and say, for goodness sakes, that wouldn't happen. It's frustrating if things are implausible. So I like to spend a fair bit of time looking into different facts for my books. In Magpie's Bend, I spoke to our local postmistress, who was really instrumental in when our shop looked like it was going to shut. She stepped in and took over the whole procedure. So that was really helpful. I also spoke to some people from a local church, and they had the same thing. Their church was going to be sold to the highest bidder, and they rallied together as a community to save it. So they were really good at St. Bridget's Church in Koroit. Also, I've got some friends who are nurses and vets, so there's a couple of medical / animal health issues that go through the book, so I had to consult with them for those ones. A really lovely local police officer helped me with a plot that actually in the end got cut out. It was about mail fraud, and I was going to have a whole fantastic bit about mail fraud in there, but in the end it just got a bit too busy and a bit too complicated, so we cut that subplot. But it's really nice having people that don't mind me calling up and saying, hey Jared, I'm looking at doing something about mail fraud. What can you tell me? What type of people, how would they get caught? What would they do? So it's lovely to have a really nice community of people that I can call on, and people love helping out. If you explain up front, what you're doing and what you'd like, and you don't take up too much of the time, then they're usually happy to help.
Yeah. And when you've been doing your research for any of your books, has there been anything you've ever come across that has like really, really surprised you?
Oh, that's a good one. One of the ladies that I spoke to about snake bite, she had a
Mm.
dog that was bitten by a snake, and that dog's lips stayed paralyzed thereafter. So
Oh,
it's
really?
got like a really lopsided grin to it.
Oh,
So there's a small one. When
yeah.
I was researching the mail fraud, there was people that would the different lengths that people would go to smuggle animals like bats and sugar gliders and stuff.
Mm,
You know, it was quite upsetting actually looking at
mm,
the lengths that people would go to, and these poor animals when they had to try and untape them because
yeah.
they'd been taped together so they didn't move and
Mm,
attract attention. So things like that, I guess, are quite interesting.
mm, mm. And Sharon's wondering if you write every day.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you for your question. I don't write every day. I find because I spend so much time writing during the week that I kind of need to have a break on the weekends. So if I'm on deadline, absolutely, I don't have a choice. I've got editing or writing or redrafting to do. There's, no ifs, buts, and maybes when I'm on deadline. But my general practice is that I'll write when my children are at school, and then I try not to do too much when they're home. Usually, when it's not lockdown, we've got sports on and things to do, and they want to go to the playground and the beach. But because we have so many different things on between, the couple of acres of garden that we've got, as well as children, as well as the livestock that we've got at our property, I try and leave weekends for, family and for gardening and baking and reading, because, you've got to fit all those things in. You can't, for me, I can't fit it all in. And sometimes I feel like I'm cramming too much in as it is. But I don't, I think about it though. I'm still thinking about my story when I'm out
Yeah.
weeding the garden.
Yeah.
When I'm mixing up some icing for a cake, I'll think, yes, that could be a problem in the book. She might have made a birthday cake and put this in instead of that, and then she's got a dilemma. Well, what happens then? So little things will come to me as I'm working, as my mind is ticking away when I'm not sitting at the desk.
And Sarah Joy, she wants to know if you have to read your books in order.
No, Sarah Joy, you can, if you're going to read all three, you may as well start at the start.
Yeah.
But I've had plenty of people that have started off with Magpie's Bend that have either, received it for a birthday present or as a gift, and they've not heard of the other ones, or they've just seen it on sale and loved the look of the cover, which is great. So they've started with Magpie's Bend, then gone back and read Bottlebrush Creek and Wildflower Ridge, and it's not been a problem. But if you were planning on reading all three, then you may as well start right with the very first one. There's a couple of spoilers that kind of come up as to, what's happening in Lara's life that is explained in Wildflower Ridge in more detail. Whereas, if you read Magpie's Bend first, you'll know what's going on there, and then that bit in Wildflower Ridge won't be as pertinent. But I've had lots of people read them in all sorts of ways, and one of the really cool things that I've had is a lady who's read Wildflower Ridge 3 times and Bottlebrush Creek twice, because she wanted to reread the oldest book before she read the new book.
Oh, so she's
she read Wildflower Ridge in 2019 when it came out, and then last year she read it again before Bottlebrush Creek came out, and then this year she read Wildflower and then Bottlebrush and then Magpies, and next year she plans on reading all three before the fourth one comes. So that's pretty special. That blew me away when she said that. It's very touching, the lovely comments that I'll get from different people.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Suze wonders if you've ever experienced writer's block.
Yeah, look, I do. I think anyone who writes will have a time in their story when they go, I don't know what's going to happen next, or I just aren't feeling this scene, or the words aren't flowing. For me, because I'm contracted to write a book a year with Alan and Unwin, I can't just float around for days going, yeah, no, I don't know what happens, and I'm not sure how we're going to go here. I hope that it comes. That's maybe a luxury for someone who doesn't have a contract. But for me, I put myself in the chair every morning at 9 o'clock. I say, all right, I'm off to work, even in lockdown. I say, all right, everyone, kids, you've got your online computers on Reef Online Learning. I'm off to work. I've got my beautiful big earrings on. I've got my cardigan, my jeans, my Ugg boots. It's my work uniform. And I head off to work. And I sit at my desk and I write and I write. And there's so many things, distracting me. I can see the cows out the paddock. I can see my garden. I can see spots that need weeding. I can, the kids are often cooking downstairs because, they love baking too. So many different distractions. But if I don't sit at my desk religiously every weekday and write, then I wouldn't get the book written. So the way that I work through writer's block is to tell myself, I just need to get down a new scene today. I just need to start a new scene, or I just need to write 500 words. So whatever trick it is that you can tell yourself to get in the chair and start writing, you usually find as soon as you do commit to sitting down and writing, then the words will flow. It's when you're procrastinating, you go, oh, well, I'll check my emails, or, oh, I've got a heap of messages in my inbox on Messenger. I'll sift through those first. That's when your day can get away from you and you can get to the end of the day and go, oh, I didn't actually, that's right, my paid job is to write books and I didn't do any of that today. Oops. It doesn't work very well. You feel terrible at the end of the day.
Mary Lou wonders what your favourite thing is to bake.
Oh, Mary Lou, I've got lots of favourites, so many favourites. Yo-yo biscuits are always good because I love eating them as well, and everyone in the house loves them too. There's also the fun that you can have with the different icing, pink icing on a yo-yo biscuit. There's nothing prettier, is there? Last week, I guess if I went through the things that I've baked this week, biscuits are always a winner. Slice is always good. Honey crackles, or people call them honey joys as well. I call them honey crackles. I also, like a good bit of cinnamon scroll, nice and sweet, bread, delicious. So yeah, pretty much everything I like to bake.
You're making us all hungry. And Sandy, you mentioned Sandy before in her new book. She's actually watching as well, and she said she's in the middle of Magpie's Bend at the moment and loving it.
Oh, you're a sweetheart, Sandy. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us what you hope readers will love about your books.
Yeah, look, every reader hopes that, every author hopes that people will just really enjoy themselves and lose themselves in that good book and cheer for the characters and feel what they're feeling. I guess it's really nice to be able to give people an escape to the country, because I know that a lot of us are in lockdown. We don't all have the luxury of a couple of paddocks and some cute lambs and some cows to cheer us up anytime we're feeling a bit down. So I hope that I can kind of give people that armchair travel away to a safe place, a warm place where it's a caring community. Yeah, everyone's not perfect in my books, but I guess they're all trying their best, and hopefully I leave people with a smile.
And as a reader of your books, I have to say that I've certainly found that you have been able to do that. And like you said, it's great to be taken away when you are stuck somewhere in the city as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that, Jackie.
And Donna's got a good question. She says, do you or did you ever have an editor or agent look over your manuscript prior to submitting it to the publisher?
That's a good question. So I didn't have an editor and agent look over it. I was hoping to maybe get an agent before I got a publishing contract, but I pitched to two different agents. One of them already had quite a full stable of rural romance authors, and the other one I didn't hear back from for a couple of months. And it was really funny, but the day that I heard back from my publisher with the offer of a contract, I got an email 10 minutes after this lovely agent, who's a really nice lady, saying, oh, Maya, I'm so sorry. Your submission kind of got lost in the process. Where are you at with it? And I thought to myself, oh, she must have heard from the publisher they were going to publish me, but no, she hadn't. It just was uncanny timing. So no, I didn't have an agent and I didn't have an editor read over it. I think because I did a writing course while I was writing the first draft of Wildflower Ridge, and I'd honed it. So I'd written this first draft, and I sent off maybe about 200 words of every chapter would get sent off to a really lovely writing coach who was my tutor with the Writers Studio Australia. And so she would give me some feedback about, okay, well, where's the story going here, and is there enough conflict? So, you know, she didn't read the whole manuscript, but she would read little bits every now and then and different planning points along the way and give some constructive criticism. I also gave it to my mum. I gave it to a couple of writing friends. I gave it to a few friends who were just really keen readers, and they've been lovely. They've read each of my manuscripts, Lindy and Amber, and they do a great job of picking up things just from a reading perspective. It's invaluable. So not officially, no, but having worked for quite a few years as a journalist was really handy as well. So I kind of had that ability to edit my own work as well. But I do recommend if people are looking to get published and they're not confident in that, then I don't think you can go wrong with investing in your craft by getting someone to look over it for you that's got a keen eye for it, because, you know, you're not always the best judge of your own work. And that's hard to have that distance between your manuscript that you've been working on and, you know, you pour hours and hours, and I work harder as a writer than I have in any other job I've ever done. And I put in more hours every week on the business of writing. But all that love and attention that you give to your manuscript might not necessarily, you still can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. So it is good to have external eyes, people who know what they're doing. And that's one of the beauties of a publishing house. Allen & Unwin, it goes through so many edits after I've given it to them. You know, they have suggestions on structure, on timing, on character development, and all the different things that go into making it the polished, finished product that you see on the shelf.
So even now that you've had a few books published, do you like to share your work with others before you submit it?
I think less and less as I get more confident in what I'm doing. And, you know, I know the process now. I know that it's really tempting. And I've sent the manuscript to my mum. She's read it and she's fantastic. And she gives me great feedback because she's an awesome mum and makes me feel like I haven't just wasted the last year working on the manuscript that's, you know, could possibly be junk. She'll tell me it's wonderful. But I also have given this manuscript to my husband, and he's read through the whole thing before I sent it off to the publisher. And at this stage of the game, I will send it to one of my very trusted writing friends, and she'll look at it, but not for another month or two until I've got the structural edits back from my publisher. She'll send them to me, and then I'll send it to two of my beta readers and my good writing friend, Kanina.
That's a great insight. There's been a lot of people commenting how great it is to hear that sort of information. I'm wondering, if you could be any of your characters for a day, who would you choose to be and why?
Nobody's ever answered me that before, Jackie. That's a really cool question. Well, look, perhaps I would be Angus McIntyre. Now, he's the dad. He is Penny, Angie, Lara, and Diana's dad. And he has been the number one cheerleader for these girls throughout their whole life. Their mum died, so Angus's wife. Annabelle died when the girls were in their teenage years. So probably it'd be really cool to see things from his perspective. And I have no doubt that he would be so proud of his daughters and his grandchildren and all that they've achieved. So, you know, it gives you all the feels thinking about that. But that would be really neat to see things from his perspective, because I've never written a single scene from his perspective. No. But I feel that would be cool.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I'm wondering, when you start your books, do you always know the ending?
No. I do consider myself a planner. For most books, I've had a pretty good idea of what, you know, the main themes are going to be, some of the main touch points that will happen. So when I was writing Magpie's Bend, I started off thinking about a fun run. And that was the thing that got me going. I didn't know much about I knew, because I'd written Lara in Wildflower Ridge and Bottle Brush Creek, I knew what some of her backstory was, but I knew that I wanted her to be involved in organising a fun run. And then everything else clicked into place. Well, why? Why is she organising a fun run? Okay, yep. It's because the shop's in jeopardy and she wants to help try and save it. Okay, well, what else could happen? Oh, well, they could have a black tie ball and try and get some other people to town. So the little pieces kind of fall into place as you're coming along. Because I write rural romance, it's no huge spoiler to say that there's going to be a happily ever after, a happily for now. I'm not going to kill off my main character at the end of my book. That's just not the genre that we're working with here. And that suits me just fine because, you know, I love my characters. I want to hang on to them and keep them going. So I know that when I started writing this book, I knew that Lara would finish up the book in a better place than she was at the start. And I also knew that I wanted to put a country journalist in there as well, but I wasn't sure what was going to happen with that newspaper. And, you know, when you read the book, a few different things happened that have since happened to the local paper that I used to work for. But, yeah, little points come to me as I go along. And, you know, my notebook is in the other room, but, you know, I could open that up and show you that after I've written the first draft, then I go through a huge process of then tightening up, okay, what have we got in each scene? What does the reader know at the start of this scene? What do they know at this point? All right, that chapter, that might need to just go all together. There's nothing interesting happening there. Let's ditch it. Let's, you know, change this plot line and move this forward and move that back. So there's a lot of planning that goes in after I've got that first draft down, and, you know, a fair bit of groundwork that goes in before I start it as well.
And Michelle's wondering if you think you ever might write Angus's story.
Oh, would I ever write Angus's story?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I will, Michelle. So he's a lovely character. And I did think in Magpie's Bend, when I first started writing Magpie's Bend, I was going to have him as a semi-main character getting a new relationship, a new lease on life. But I didn't go down that path. I started writing that and then, you know, diverted my focus because I seem to cram a lot of things into my books, and then afterwards I have to read them out and work out, you know, that's too much. This needs to go, that needs to go, which is a great place to be. It's better than kind of getting to the end of the manuscript when nothing's happened.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But no, I wouldn't mind having Angus pop up in another book, just as maybe a little, just a little cameo feature. But I don't think at this stage, never say never, maybe book 10, I might be ready to find out what happened to Angus. So you never know. But at this stage, no, I think he might pop up, but he won't get his own book.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking to us. It's been great chatting to you. Just wondering if you want to share with people how they can keep in touch with you. I know that I've seen some wonderful posts from you on Instagram.
Yes, I love Instagram's my favourite platform. I like taking photos. When I worked at the newspaper, I was the photographer as well. So, you know, it brings me great joy to kind of capture little snapshots of the beauty that we have around our property. So I put up lamb spam, I put up things that we're baking, things that I'm reading, things that I'm growing in the garden. So people can find me on Instagram at maya.linnell.writes. They can also find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I also have a profile, but I don't generally update the profile so much. So maya.linnell.writes, the actual page, is the one that you can find different updates. Not as regular as the Instagram though. And I have a website as well. So if people have any burning questions, they could send them through the website, and a newsletter that I put out every month. So in there I have little updates of, you know, what I'm doing behind the scenes with writing, baking, gardening. I have author interviews because I can't get enough of reading great fiction. Yeah. So there's always book giveaways there as well. So that comes out in the first week in every month. There's a fantastic cookbook up for grabs this weekend, and also Natasha Lester's new novel, The Riviera House, which is a fantastic historic story that I'm halfway through, and loving it. So I'll be finishing that
okay,
one
yeah.
possibly tonight. You know, there's only that much to go.
Not much
So
left.
I'll be giving away a copy of that this weekend as well. So people just need to be subscribers and answer a couple of quick questions from the interviews that I've done with Natasha and the author of the cookbook, Lucy Tweed.
Well, thanks for that. Also, some people have asked about, is it Friday that you're doing the trivia with that? I'm wondering if maybe you want to share that in our group so people can easily see that. Yeah, that would be great if you could share it.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's the Wattle Island Book Club Trivia Night. It's general trivia, so it's open to anyone. There's really good prizes to be won. There's a $200 Penguin Books mystery pack, so that's pretty darn special.
Yeah.
So that's Friday night at 7 o'clock on Zoom. So people have to register to get that link, but I'll put the link up in the show notes.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for coming. I can't see all the different comments as people are commenting. It's because you and I are on Zoom, Jackie, so I can't see the comments, but I'm really thrilled that people can join us tonight and be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks to everyone who joined in and asked questions. We had lots joining and lots of questions. Bye, everybody.
Stay well, stay warm.